I was thinking, even for people that are listening to this podcast, that if they're on a track where they are in an organization, they're not an independent consultant, it'd be great to have those different perspectives as well.
Cool. And I get to do the industrial stuff, right?
There you go.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go.
All right. Well, I'm Scott Cuthbert, CEO of Safeopedia.
And I'm Gabe Encarnacion. I'm Vice President of BBL Safety.
And today we're going to be talking about career development. And Gabe, do you want to talk about our guest today?
Really excited for our guest today. This is Josh Russell. He's a certified safety professional, works for the Howard Hughes Medical Institute, and he's got 20 years of safety experience. Really fascinating background as to how he got into safety and just the steps that he took to really grow that career and develop it. Josh and I have known him for a couple of years now, and just really, really solid guy. As far as somebody that really is, he understands what it's like to progress in your career, and now in a position of leadership, I feel like he brings perspective of what companies can do to really invest in their employees, in the people that want to progress and grow in their positions, especially in the safety field. Which, I mean, in my conversations with Josh, he kind of fell into it. Targeted approach and how to do it. Josh has got some really great tips on how to progress with this, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and I wanted to point out that he works for Howard Hughes Medical Institute, which is located in Chevy Chase, Maryland. So a lot of big names involved with
the right.
Yeah.
No, solid guy. I think there's a lot of great nuggets of wisdom and insight that he has to give for both the beginning safety professional and even the established leaders.
Cool. Well, yeah. Hey, I mean, if we just jump in, Josh, hey, thanks. Welcome to Safeonomics. And this month we wanted to dive into the career development side of things. We hear a lot from our safety professional community that there's endless number of technical courses to take and certifications and designations, but how does somebody really take hold of their career, develop the skill set that they need, to advance within the current organization, or maybe to get that job in a different company to help them again kind of ascend, through the ranks and assume more responsibility and develop their career. So maybe we'll jump in, and you could provide a little bit of a background on your journey to help kind of set the framework for the conversation today.
Sure. So back in 2001, I got a job as a laboratory technician. I didn't have any college degree at this point. I decided I wanted to work in the science field, and not quite sure why. I watched a lot of documentaries. And I had somehow landed a job through a temp agency working in a lab doing DNA sequencing and PCR. I mean, I was doing high throughput, so I really didn't know what I was doing still, but I was involved in it. So I was in the lab for 2 years. They were shutting our labs down, and my buddy worked in safety as a hazardous materials technician, basically just collecting lab waste, et cetera. And he was leaving. He said, "Hey, do you want this gig? I'm leaving. I know you need a job because they're closing your lab down." So I took it. I had no idea what that really meant. I know that I got the job. They switched departments, and I got like a $10,000 raise, and I couldn't believe that an entry-level job in safety paid more than an entry-level job in science, which I thought was pretty cool. But
that is pretty cool.
Yeah. I did that for a year, left there. Shortly after, I got a job with a company that was working on a malaria vaccine. And so they brought me in to develop an entire safety program, which at this point I still had very minimal experience. And so I got the job there because a buddy of mine was in maintenance. And I worked there for 5 years, developed a safety program, regular safety, general safety, and then also working with malaria infected mosquitoes and stuff like that. So that was an interesting journey. I left there, got a job at the EPA as a consultant, as an industrial hygienist. Again, I don't know how I got that because I had absolutely no IH background, but somehow I sold myself in the interview, I guess. I was there for 3 years and I did a lot of indoor air quality investigations. But I also started getting involved with facilities design and drawing reviews and a lot of facilities related safety stuff there. Did that for 3 years, and then I got on with where I'm at now with the Howard Hughes Medical Institute. And I was brought in there as a safety specialist to focus on contractor construction safety and emergency response. Again, pretty much outside of my wheelhouse, except for a little bit of exposure at the EPA. Been there for 10 years now. I was a safety specialist for a few years, got it then became a team lead, manager, senior manager. And during that time, I lead I have 8 folks on my safety team. I also run a diagnostic laboratory. Again, not my specialty, but I've been able to do it somehow. And then I used to have security for a while too. So it's been an interesting journey. A lot of jobs that I wasn't qualified for that I've been able to somehow fall into and really thrive and enjoy.
Yeah, no kidding. For the number of times that you said I wasn't qualified for this, that was pretty impressive.
Not a single one. I was not qualified for any of them, to be honest with you.
Well, that's, I think, I mean, I'm hearing that it's not always what you know, but who you know. You had some connections within different organizations, and definitely leveraging those connections to your personal benefit. Not, absolutely nothing wrong with that, but a good, I think, message. Don't be afraid to let your friends know, your contacts know that you're looking for something new, and spread the word through that friend network. And then, I think let's drill into what Gabe talked about too, about, I think a lot of people, they've kind of coined the phrase imposter theory, imposter syndrome lately, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of safety professionals, I think a lot of people in general, not just picking on safety pros, but a lot of people suffer from that. Like, I don't want to put my name forward because I don't think I'm qualified, right? But maybe you could talk a little bit about the confidence, or just the assuredness that say, hey, I can get in there and figure things out, so I'll put myself out there. But maybe talk a little bit about that to help people understand it.
Yeah. So two things. The network thing, I'm going to hammer on that for just a second. It's
go for it.
That is, I took a 5-day MBA class once through the American Management Association, and one of the things the teacher taught us was run for success, and the acronym RUN stood for results, uniqueness, and network. And because if you have the results, that's great, but if you haven't, somebody else has the same ones, that doesn't give you a leg up. But then if you stand out, if you've got something about you that really stands out, that makes you unique. Now you have the same results or better, and you stand out from that person. But the network is the critical part. I mean, I learn constantly through my network. I don't use it as leverage to find jobs. I did that once, but now I use it to learn. Gabe and I talk all the time, and that's somebody I learn. He's a forever learner, and I'm forever learning from him. So I think that's critical. As far as imposter syndrome, I actually, not too long ago, I talked to my team about this, and I told them that I have suffered from this, and I still do to this day. I did some research on this, and they said that high performers, and I'm not saying that I am a high performer, but I'm saying in general, high performers are more likely to suffer from imposter syndrome.
Right.
But I think it's what you do with it, right? You can use it, you can allow it to make you feel like I don't belong, and you cower and you don't take opportunities or take chances. But if you harness it right, it actually can be a motivator. And I think that's what I've been able to do. I've recognized that I journal, I tell them I journal, and for my affirmation, a lot of times it's, I belong where I am. And why do I have to write that? I know I'm doing a good job, but my mind is always like, you got to do better. You're not doing good. So, I think that's okay. And I think you got to just use it, and you got to take chances. I mean, like Michael Jordan said, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So,
right. That's so funny.
I think that was Wayne Gretzky, actually.
Of course, because Canada.
Because he's a Canadian and he's a hockey player.
He missed more than Michael, but sure.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, what's so interesting about that whole the whole imposter syndrome, and even I love that acronym of run towards success, because even thinking about what we talk about with the intersection between business and safety, is that ultimately a business wants to succeed, and you have to understand what it is that helps the business to succeed, and what helps you succeed in that.
Yep.
So, as you said, Josh, we kick around these ideas all the time, between the two of us, and understanding, what are the things that will make you unique, what makes you stand out, what makes you be able to understand what makes your organization tick. And it sounds like that's helped in every part of your career in that. And so I want to kind of touch on that network a little bit. I mean, how do you even build something like that if you're in a large organization, and let's say you're just getting started? For you, like, how did that build? How did you make those connections?
Yeah, so I realized that safety people are not always everybody's buddy, right? And so luckily for us, like I was talking about earlier, where we have like flag football league and basketball and all that stuff. I take part in a lot of the social activities, or I'll help coordinate them and stuff like that. And I know that that's not for everybody, but I did that specifically so that I could help to humanize safety with other people. They'd see me not on a safety level. I'm not in a meeting. We're not talking about observations or so on and so forth. It's let's have fun. I'm a human. Now you see me differently. But I think that's the way that I've done it. But I think, just we talk about this too, Gabe, is authenticity is huge, right? And I think just having conversations with people and building genuine connections and helping them to see that you're a real person, that you're there because you care, and it's not because you're trying to make their life miserable. But the network in that, at work, and most of it I've done through just trying to take part in as much outside of meetings or walkthroughs or whatever it is that we're doing to try to build that camaraderie and just a community feeling.
Yeah, I know Scott and I have run into this before too, and we've and Josh, you and I have been at conferences together and stuff, and it seems to be that it's the conversations outside of the official meetings where you really start to get those connections and make those build your network, build your community. And I think regardless of the size of your organization, you can do that. Whether it's a large lab or even, like in my company where there's 13 of us, there are ways to humanize it. You can make those connections with people, understand how they work, what motivates them. And I think you touched on this really well too, is that it's not necessarily trying to build these connections with people so that you can get something from them. It's what can you give to them? What can you learn from them? What can you impart on them and help them grow? So that's really cool.
Yeah, that was I was just going to say, like, our last month we talked to Abby Ferry, and one of the things she mentioned was just being curious and poking her head into different areas of the facility and asking questions, and that I think she talked about how that humanized her, and people were like, who's this woman that keeps showing up and asking these questions, and why is she interested in what we're doing, right? And I think it helps build rapport and humanize you as an individual, and also learn, right, about the organization and what else is going on. And
yeah,
one thing that Gabe touched on, like conferences and meeting, and I think that forever learners, forever learning from each other. I love that statement. And I think that a lot of times, like you talked about putting yourself out there and organizing the flag football team, right? And a lot of times like attract likes, right? So probably no surprise that Gabe and I hit it off the first conference that we ever met at, and here we are.
That's true.
Doing a podcast together. But that's almost sometimes limiting, right? Like and I don't know if you can talk about it a little bit, but recognizing that, hey, I like hanging out with these group of people because we have similar interests, but I really should push myself and network with people that I'm maybe not as naturally connected with. Have you experienced that at all?
Yeah. So another thing, we have a newsletter that'll come out. I think it's every Sunday night, and it'll have the talks that are happening, the scientific talks, or papers that have been published, or awards that have been won, et cetera, et cetera. And so I try to be really mindful and read those. Sometimes I'll read the papers. I'm not going to lie, I don't understand everything that I'm reading or a lot of it. The Google machine gets real active when I see some of these words, so I can try to understand it. But then what I'll try to do is I'll recognize somebody in there, and I'll see them, I'll see them at work, and I'll say, hey, that was a really cool paper that you wrote, or congratulations on the award. And these are folks that I normally don't have normal interactions with, but I think that's like, oh my gosh, that person's paying attention. I am paying attention because I care about what they're doing. My job is to help push the science forward.
Right.
Yeah, good job doing that thing that you did at that place. Gosh, even in your intro to this, I was just like, I understood DNA and malaria, and that was about it. It's like, I'm not sure what some of these other terms are. That sounds super cool.
Okay.
That's awesome though. So I mean, okay, so you've been in safety for how many years now? Like 20 years, right?
Yep, 20.
Okay. So you've probably seen quite a few things. Obviously, like you were managing a lot of stuff during COVID, which was new for a ton of people, obviously. And so now you've got quite a few notches in your belt. How do you keep up your career growth now? I mean, what are you doing to keep up that learning?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this recently a lot. Is like, what am I doing, and what could I do better to grow more? I think one of the things I've done is I've done my best to surround myself with people that I feel are smarter than me. So I'm trying to constantly learn from them, and I really am. Like the people that I work with they're brilliant, and so I really am blessed to be able to learn from them constantly, especially technology. I routinely ask for feedback, and I try to adjust based on that feedback, and I think that's part of my growth. I'm a little removed from as much program administration as I used to do, so I get a little rusty and stuff. I'll try to use my professional development budget to take courses to brush up on something that I used to be a competent person in fall protection, and I haven't really administered that for quite some time, so I need to brush up on that. I read and research a lot about topics. One of the things I like to do, especially when I have newer employees, is I try to I try to use the term "go fish," because somebody,
Okay.
hey, what does this mean? And I'll say, "Go fish." And we talked about that beforehand. But what that means is, I want you to go to the internet and I want you to surf and surf and surf, because honestly, that's how I learned. I would say at least 50 to 60% of the stuff that I know has not been through trainings, and it hasn't been from somebody. I've learned that way as well, but a lot of it has been just me trying to figure it out, because like I said, I wasn't qualified for all these jobs, but I didn't want to get in there and say, oh, I don't know any of this, so I did a lot of that. And I think a lot of people, you learn a lot better when you actually do the research to try to figure out the answer for yourself. So, and then I learned from my network. I've become great friends with some of them, and a lot of them are smarter than I am. So I get to really learn from them, and then sound smart when I go say the stuff they're telling me.
There you go. You just repeat it with some authority.
I was going to say, I bet you a lot of the network would say the same thing, that, oh yeah, Josh is smarter than I am. And so I just,
that is true. That's legit.
One thing that you maybe touched on there was like preparation for interviews, right? I think it seems like common sense that you would be prepared to be knowledgeable about the company you're interviewing with and the job, the role that you're getting into, but maybe it's not so common. Could you talk a little bit about, or expand a little bit on how you prepare for those interviews so that you land those jobs that you're not qualified for?
I think Scott just asked you, how do you get our audience to learn how to BS as well as you have?
Well,
I'm just kidding.
Fake it till you make it, right?
Fake it till you become it. That's right.
There you go.
I'll study it. What I've done in the past is I'll study a job description inside and out, and any term or, is responsible for this or will administer this or anything. And if I'm like, what is that? Or what does that even mean? That's when I'll hit the books, I'll hit Google, I'll look at OSHA, I'll start researching all those things and try to, at a minimum, have a good surface understanding so that I can at least speak some of the lingo when it comes to that topic.
That's a good point too. I think that there's a lot where I know I've interviewed people that have come to my company, and I'd like to see if they've done some homework first. Even just, hey, have you looked on our website? Have you looked at what we actually do or what we're about? And so, yeah, even just doing a little bit of that research, shockingly, is it's not quite as common as you would think it would be.
Agreed. And one of the things I think it says about somebody is it separates the who's looking for a job and who's looking for the job, right?
Interesting. Yeah.
Because when you come to an interview and you're like, this is the job I want. This is, you're asking for this. I have this. You're asking for this. I understand that. I want to be here, so on and so forth. Well, that's an easy way for a hiring person right off the top to say, this person's engaged and they're not even here yet. Right. And so, and you can hopefully expect that to be the behavior that's continued if you bring them on. But somebody shows up, yeah, I don't know, I applied for, 50, 60 jobs. What's this one about? Yeah.
Wow. Have you had that really?
Not that many, but certainly.
I've been on the interviewing side of those answers before, and it's a little kind of confusing for me to hear somebody, I don't really know what company's all about. I can't remember the job description,
It's like, I think we're done here.
Yeah. Yeah. What about, I think we've focused on, leaving your existing job and getting the new job. What about, advancing yourself within your existing organization?
Yeah, I was thinking about that too, because you've been in this at Howard Hughes Medical Institute for 10 years now. That is actually a rarity for a lot of people now to be at one location that long. So yeah, how did you manage to grow in that and keep engaged and keep progressing?
I think some people get into jobs and they just continue. I want to advance. I want this. I want the next thing. And a year or two in, I'm ready for a promotion. And when I talk to my team or when I talk to other people about my advice is master what it is that you have. Because basically you're on a ladder, and every time, the better and better you get at what you're doing, you're climbing a ladder towards the next floor. And when you've mastered everything you own, you're knocking on that ceiling. And at some point, somebody either opens the door, if you got to open a different door and go in a different direction. But I think it's mastery. You can't deny somebody who has absolutely mastered everything, and then they're like, I'm ready, right? And you can see it when they're ready. So I think it's really just focusing on mastery of what you're doing. Try not to be distracted by, let me take on a whole bunch more, and try to really get great at the things that you're doing.
So it sounds like there was a lot of self-motivation in that. Did you have other people that kind of who opened those doors for you? How did that happen for you?
So at Howard Hughes, I've been promoted by 3 different managers. So it was different people. And I think it was just, I just was very determined. I was resilient, and I wanted to do the absolute best that I possibly could. I think it was just, I was focused on doing the best. And our goal now is to have world-class holistic safety programs, and so that is a huge aspiration, world-class, what's the benchmark for that? But that's the goal. And so we're not going to set a goal of, we want safety programs that reduce risk. Come on, that's what they're all supposed to do. We want safety programs that are world-class, that people are like, you got to see what they're doing, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think it's also setting your goals high, but also, somewhat achievable. So
I think that's really neat too, that's even from the leadership in your organization, that is their perspective, that they want to set a good, a good high bar and want to do really well with that. I think even just having the perspective where they can look for people like you that are wanting to do better, that are looking just beyond the nuts and bolts of the job, and want to look at how do they actually improve, how do they make their mark or make things better for the organization as a whole. I think that's something that I've advised different business leaders to do, is to make sure to know the people that are wanting to advance. We talk a lot about the whole quiet quitting thing, or that's been in conversation a lot. I think part of that even falls on management.
Oh,
that if you don't understand who's trying to move up and perform well, and you don't give them the opportunities to continue to learn, they will lose motivation. I mean, it's just a natural thing to happen. So with that in mind, I mean, in addition to just keeping an eye out for your up and coming performers, what would be some words of advice that you would have for even business leaders in their organizations as to how to help those people keep growing, learning, so they can be in the company for 10, 12, 20 years?
Yeah. So one of which is, leaders have to be engaged in the success of their people. It's a cyclical process. I mean, so the leaders engaged in the development and growth of their people, those folks then feel appreciated and feel, empowered, and they then are more productive. Retention is better. I mean, and it's a circle. So, I mean, surf LinkedIn for training opportunities, look at conferences for training opportunities, send articles. Hey, this is a cool article. Give feedback. Hey, when we were doing this the other day, this happened. I think it would be really great. You know what I mean? Do it in a way that's productive, but feedback is, we've talked about this, Gabe. I think it's the greatest gift in the world that is most often not given, right?
Yeah.
And that is, and one is, you got to have a recipient that wants it or is willing to hear it, but you got to have somebody who's willing to deliver it. And that's usually the hard part, right? A lot of people just don't do it because it's so uncomfortable. But it also shows that you care when you tell somebody, look, I want you to be successful, so I'm going to share this with you because I think this is something that could either be a hang up, or if you get it fixed, it can really help you in the future. But I think it's those things, and having open conversations. Talk about what are your goals? What is it that you want to do? How do you define success? And then when that happens, then I'll start to look for opportunities where I can try to help push towards those goals or whatever that success is that they want.
Interesting.
I think it's probably an important message for people who are looking, for career advancement to be bold, don't be afraid. Good companies, good managers, good leaders should be open to the fact that you want to progress through your career, and you should feel comfortable bringing that up, letting people around you know that, hey, I'm looking for that next opportunity. I'm willing to relocate, or I'm not willing, or whatever it is, so that you're kind of networking, within your organization, letting them know. And it's probably a sign of things to come if the company's not open to having those kind of conversations as well.
Right.
Yeah. This is something one of my former bosses used to say to me all the time. It's an organization's responsibility to make sure they're getting what they need out of their employee, and it's the employee's responsibility to make sure they're getting what they want, what they need out of the organization. And it's so true, right? I mean, and the growth thing is just, it's huge. The boss has got to be engaged in the growth of the people. And the thing is I think the other thing is, I think a lot of leaders and managers are really short-sighted when it comes to somebody who wants to achieve more. Well, I don't want somebody who's only going to be here 2 or 3 years, and then all of a sudden they're taking off and going to do something else. That's flattering. When somebody's able to produce and develop like that, I feel like that is my main job, is to help people launch, either grow within, and if the opportunity isn't there and they launch and they go do something great, well, that's that looks good for me too. I mean, it's great for but it's also good for me because I've helped them progress in their and develop in their profession, and then they're ready for more. They work me out of a job. Hey, I mean, if that, as long as it wasn't something that I did, yeah. But if they did it, all of a sudden they're performing better than me, know more than me, and and able to do all that, then sure, I wouldn't be happy about losing my job, but I'd be like, wow, this has been what a great journey for that to happen.
So I think that's how Belichick felt when Brady went to Tampa, right? So proud of this accomplishment and all this, he's able to go and win a Super Bowl somewhere else.
There you go.
Look what I did.
Yeah. So this is kind of interesting. One of the things that I've really enjoyed about talking with you, Josh, and as you and I have gotten to know each other over the last few years, is that there is very much this abundance mindset with you, where it's not you trying to protect your little kingdom or hoard your knowledge kind of thing to make yourself look better. You give so freely with other people, with people in your network, with your own staff, with your own team. What's so interesting about this too, and you've mentioned this in the past, that you have you've got a very diverse group that you work with. A lot of people that are maybe fresh out of college or early on in their careers that are getting started. And of course, with 20 years in safety, you've had quite a bit of experience with that. What are you doing differently, let's say, with your team now that was not done with you? There's a lot of talk about the next generation of employees, of leaders, of safety professionals that are coming up. What are you doing now that you didn't have before that you're now imparting with this new group that's coming up?
Yeah, I have someone new starting in 12 days. So I've been working.
Oh, nice. Congratulations.
Thank you. What that's going to look like. So I try to put together like a training and information plan, basically an onboarding plan. And part of that is I'll schedule meetings with various stakeholders, people that I know that they're going to be interfacing with. So, and I'll, obviously do an intro. This is what the person's going to be doing, and so on and so forth. Just try to get them acclimated a little bit in that way. I'll identify classes that I think they should take that would complement what they are already bringing to the table to help get them ready for what they're about to take on. We'll set up some shadowing programs so that they can watch how the other safety specialists operate. Then they can see kind of how we do business and what the culture is like. And they're not having to learn by doing it in a way that rubs people the wrong way. They can see how it gets done, and then that's modeled in their behavior.
Yeah, instead of getting slapped every time and just learning through that.
Yeah, exactly. Of course, I'm pushing association memberships and involvement and networking and like all that. I mean, that's one thing that was not done with me. When I started in safety, I wasn't sent to any classes, I don't believe, by my manager at that time. It was actually a lady who worked for our hazardous waste vendor. She and I got to talking and kind of became buddies. And she said, if I was you, I would take this class. And if I was you, I would take this class. And I would attend this, course that Maryland's putting on and so on and so forth. And that's really how I started to get my footing under me, is by that person taking me under the wing, but it wasn't my leader. And so I think it's really important for them to be pushed and given some direction, because you walk into a new organization and you have no idea how people operate, how the business operates, who's who.
You hardly know where the bathroom is at that point.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And, so I think, it's really helpful to have that help to understand what it is exactly they want to get out of this, right? Which you should have gotten some of that out of the interviewing, but then also to give them some guidance so they can, have a pathway forward and not have to stumble too much as they work towards where they should be.
You said something earlier that I think it's worth kind of circling back on, about mastering your role and not taking on too much or spreading yourself too thin. Because I think that a lot of, I'll say, traditional advice would be to like, hey, go ask your manager what else you could do, right? And so maybe like I'd like to, like I said, drill into that a little bit and maybe talk us through that from your experience.
Yeah, because you just talked about how in your interviews, you went for jobs that you weren't exactly qualified for. So how do you reconcile? I know you're not self-contradicting yourself, or contradicting yourself, but so how do you reconcile that? Like, at what point do you jump in and say, okay, I have mastered this, I'm ready to jump to the next level? But yeah, talk about the whole mastery thing.
The mastery, yeah.
I mean, so I think as a leader, that's part of our responsibility to say, okay, this person is new. This is the thing they should start with, right? Mm-hmm. And then as you see that start to blossom and they start to get good at that, then you bring one more thing and you bring one more thing. And instead of, I mean, I've started jobs where it's like, this is yours, you know, and they throw the whole farm at you. And it's like, oh my gosh, this is a lot to get my head around.
Right.
And, yeah. So I think that's part of it. I also think it just needs to be, you know, one of the things early on to learn too. And I learned this about midway through my career, is that it's really important to go to your boss and say, okay, you've given me 15 things to do in the last couple of days, and I need you to help me prioritize them, right? Not everything can be a number one, and not everything can be a number two. Help me to know what I need to be the ones and twos. And I think after a while, you start to learn how each other, you know, you can start to, okay, when they say this is important, they really mean this is a 4. Or they say this is important, and that was a fleeting thought. We'll see if that comes up again, right? I mean, yeah. But I think that's also important. I think that's why it's important for the leader to really establish that it should be a very open back and forth conversation, right? It can't be one way. And you tell me if you feel overloaded. I'm going to tell you if I think you could take on more, and I'll hand you more. If I feel like we need to draw back a little bit so that you can get things really tight, then that's, you know, but I think you got to be aware of what's going on and also have just really good communication.
It's maybe a little off track, but just a story popped into my head when I'd started a new job at a construction company, and the district manager, Ian, you know, they called him Mr. Sunshine because he was always blowing sunshine, you know, at everything. And my supervisor at the time said, if Ian comes over and asks you to do something, you just take a note and then put it in your desk. And then if he comes by and asks you again for that same thing, you take the note out and you write, you know, and then you put it back in your desk. But if he comes around a third time, that means he actually wants you to do it. But otherwise, he just walks around the office asking people to do stuff, and there's no intent of like following up. So it was a interesting indoctrination for me, you know,
that's
brand
really
new
funny,
thinking that you want to, you know, please everybody. And they said, no, just if he only asked you once, then just don't bother. That was I'm not sure that was a healthy culture or not, but that was.
I mean, it happens. It's funny because I mentioned to a bunch of my teammates not too long ago that I do that as well. I mean, I've done that, you know, in the past. And then recently one of them said that they did it to me. So I didn't think you were to ask for that again. I was like, okay, you did it to me.
Yeah.
That's funny. So one of the things that I wanted to look at too, and especially since, you know, we're talking about businesses and safety and how that works, and retention is such a critical part of any sort of business. I mean, the cost of bringing on a new employee and then having that turnover happen is extremely high. And so that's why, I mean, I've heard, you know, of people that are doing what you're doing, basically like building that culture in your organization of open communication. And of course that comes with its own risks, definitely. And, you know, it's whenever you're dealing with people, things get messy, but there is definitely a business benefit to that, because you do have a team that functions better. They're more productive. They just get along better overall. And you had mentioned even about the flag football league and playing basketball and things like that. What are some of the other things, let's say even for a small organization, what could you do to build that positive culture that, you know, there are actually business benefits to it for sure, but even from the safety side, from the overall culture of the company, what are things that people can do to make that a reality?
Yeah, I mean, even for small companies, you know, do a potluck, have a small cookout, you know, maybe happy hour at some point. I mean, I think there's a lot of different ways that you can do it. I think part of it is also knowing your folks, right? You got to know your audience. So what is going to work with the audience that I have, and then what can we do that's kind of that's inclusive as well, right? Because like you were saying, Scott, you have some folks that are naturally going to sign up for football, some folks are not, right? I mean, so some of the other things that we've done are talent shows or lip sync battles, or I mean, you could go do karaoke together. There's a million different things. I think it's really just understanding who it is that you're trying to connect with, and kind of figure out what their likes are. Start to learn the people, and then I think at that point you can figure out something that would at least work for the majority.
Yeah, and a lot of that stuff is it doesn't really cost anything to do it.
Yeah, a potluck, man. It's fun having a pot. Now you do want to know what people's kitchens look like. I get a little weary about that, but but that's fun.
Yeah, I was going to ask if there's any like if courses, books, anything that really kind of helped you level up and get perspective or get confidence or get the insights that you needed to kind of advance within your career.
Yes. It's not safety related, but I can tell you the best course I've ever taken was I went to the Center for Creative Leadership in North Carolina. Well, they have multiple sites, but that's their headquarters. And they have a program called the Leadership Development Program, and they do research, and then they base this leadership development program off of that research. And it was monumental in my life as a professional, as a human, as a dad. I mean, it was a major game changer, and it's not cheap, but it was, it definitely changed a lot for me. I learned how to give effective feedback there, which I did not know before that. I mean, there was just so much that I learned there, and just one of the greatest experiences for me was I got to do a 360 for the first time, 360 assessment.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So everybody around me filled this 360 out, and I've told people the story. Like when you get there, and I was there with CEOs and like GS15. I mean, and at this point, I was just very new to managing. And the day you get there, you check in, and then you go to class, and the first thing they do is they give you your 360. And all of us we're being bused from the school back to our hotel and stuff like that. And everybody is on this bus. And there's some people there that are have been CEOs for 25 years. I mean, it's all over the place. And they're in the bar. I don't do this. I don't know who said this. I don't behave that way. This isn't true. I mean, that was the whole bus ride home. Everybody was a little bit miffed at what they're reading. Like, that's not true. The next morning we get on the bus and it's really silent. And people are like, man, you know what? They're right. And it was that I think what was genius about that is day one was humbling. And I think learning really happens after being humbled, right? And so we came in the next day, teach me how I can do better at this. We were hungry to get better about those things. And so it was an amazing experience altogether. I got to learn a lot about myself that I really did not know about me. And that was awesome. And then I learned a lot of, just things that really work well.
Now you're pursuing your some educational milestones, right? Like you've mentioned that you're starting, what is it, your master's program?
I'm gonna start an MBA here in the next couple of weeks.
Okay, right on.
Yeah,
very cool.
Yeah, you can never take on too much, I guess. That's what they say.
I remember having a conversation like that with there was several other CEOs, and I said, I have this really bad habit of biting off more than I can chew. And they said, and they laughed, and they're like, you talk like it's a bad thing. I was like, oh yeah, wrong audience.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, Josh, thanks so much for sharing this. This has been really educational. It's been, entertaining. As I said, you and I we talk a lot about we're all over the place, but definitely with regards to safety and how that continues to grow. I think community is a really big part of that. You've brought it up even from the beginning of the people that have poured into your life, that have opened those doors, that have taught you, and even off to the side told you, hey, maybe you should take these classes and you should get this information. This might help you. And I think even looking back at the macro perspective for the profession itself, there's got to be more of this. Safety can be a very lonely profession. I mean, it's going to be really tough to try and go through this on your own. But to have a group of people that can help you, and if there's a company, an organization, a leader, even like yourself, that understands the benefit of that and can build it, I mean, all the better. I think that's what's really going to make this profession so much better in the future.
One last bit of advice I'd give to leaders is
go.
Don't focus too much on that experience and don't focus too much on the education. Look for somebody who's an agile learner and who's going to work in your organization. You know what I mean?
Nice.
I swear it's just so important. Safety can be taught, but you can't teach drive and personality and learning agility and all those things, spirit, positivity, resilience, like all those things you really want. Somebody that has those traits, and I think that's probably what's helped me along the way. Now, I wasn't qualified, but I think I demonstrated those things, and that, so I think that helped me. And I'm a big supporter of that in future folks too, because I mean, Gabe, I finished my bachelor's after 20 years, like a month ago, right?
Yep.
And somehow I've gotten all these opportunities without even having a bachelor's, but and so I also feel convicted to do the same thing. Like that piece of paper, wonderful. Like I respect, a lot, I respect somebody who's done it. Obviously now I've done it, so I respect it even more. No, I'm kidding. But I think, it's really important to also keep your mind open to not focus too much on that stuff, but look at the person. It's really about the people.
Yeah, that's great kind of closing advice, and again made me think when I was early in my career, worked with this guy by the name of Dave Metcalf, and he asked me what I wanted to do in the future, and I said, well, after I get 15 years experience of doing the basics, then I want to get into the leadership side. And he's like, what are you waiting for? Like, how many times do you need to do this one task, before you've mastered it and you can move on, right? So, definitely, whether it's education or years of experience, I think that grit, that drive, that growth mindset, right?
Totally.
Like that's what can definitely elevate you to that next level, and people around you will see that. And if they don't recognize it, then you might be in the wrong place.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Josh, where can people find you if they want to learn more about what you're working on, if they want to work for you, stuff like that? Where can people find you?
I'm on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect on LinkedIn. Somebody's interested in anything, if there's anything that sparked some curiosity, shoot me a message. I'm more than willing to have a conversation about anything safety or leadership related with anybody that's interested. I'm super passionate about helping folks.
Awesome.
How about a little flag football strategy?
Yeah, there you go.
I never said I was good. I just
you
played. I made it on the field. We're good. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Josh. This has been great.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much for having me, Scott and Gabe. This was great.
Awesome.
Thanks.